Hi there. Welcome back to the Reel Film Chronicles podcast. As always, I'm Nathan.
And I'm Brian.
And in this week's very spooky episode, we're going to be talking about a little film called Cuckoo.
Yeah, very spooky, very strange, maybe. I guess it did have some frightening elements to it. It had a little sci-fi element to it as well.
A little bit of sci-fi, a little bit of horror, a little bit of, I don't know if you classify this as folk horror, a little bit of that element, I think.
Maybe, directed by Tilman Singer and starring Hunter Schafer, as well as Dan Stevens, who I assume is a podcast favorite. Dan is in some interesting things, right? You've seen some of his movies. You know what's going on there.
I think so. Like, I know people, like, the online discourse, they seem to love this guy.
Yeah. I mean, he was in, let's just take a quick look here. Obviously the new Godzilla versus Kong, which was honestly kind of a strange appearance.
Right, he was the Kong dentist guy, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. He's very eccentric, yeah.
I see that, I'm like, oh, that guy's getting paid for that, you know? Because he goes and does something, a smaller movie like Cuckoo here. And that's great, you know, one for them, one for me type of thing. He was in Abigail earlier this year, which I'd recommend checking out if you have not. He was in The Guest, which was a really good film. I think more and more people are picking up on that movie as the time goes on. And if you haven't seen it, great stuff. Hunter Schafer, I'm not as familiar with. Let me just take a quick look at her filmography here. Hunger Games and Kinds of Kindness, which just came out this year. I'm seeing 2 Euphoria entries, which I assume are like TV movies, or maybe some seasons are there. But this ties into a previous conversation where we're seeing a lot of names, a lot of talent come out from this television series. Like Zendaya, obviously being like the big one, but I've seen...
Was that where she kind of like, was it kind of almost like a breakthrough into pop culture? It was through Euphoria?
I think so.
Okay.
And I saw a YouTube video where they mentioned Sydney Sweeney got her big start there. Like that would probably be her breakthrough as well.
Yeah, I seem to remember she was in the show as well. I don't know I never watched Euphoria, so I don't know. Like, is it still going on, or is it over? I don't know.
I think it's still going on. I think I saw a headline saying that they're going to advance past, like do a little time jump, because I think it's a high school drama.
Yeah.
And all the characters are obviously getting older, and maybe it should be like a college thing. I don't know anything about the show. I've never seen it, but I'm thinking with all these stars coming out of it, maybe we need to go back and watch this TV show. I don't know.
I guess so. Like,
maybe. The problem is there's a lot of TV, and the bigger issue is that there's a lot of movies. There's no time for TV at
this point. Wow. Is Brian's throwing down the gauntlet for any TV fans out there?
Yeah, well,
I think in Brian's eyes, we're clearly past the golden age of TV here again, or the second golden age brought on by The Sopranos there.
Well, this comes up frequently because people will recommend me shows, and it takes me a very long time to get to them because there's too many movies to watch, and it's becoming a problem. I get a little flack here and there for not watching a show, and it's, there's just no time. But I do want to throw out, I finally got around to watching Band of Brothers earlier this summer.
Awesome.
It's only like 20 plus years late, but better late than never, I figure. Maybe in another 5-6 years, I'll watch The Pacific.
My confession, I still have to watch the second half of Band of Brothers.
Oh my God.
I'm only halfway through.
Can take the heat on this.
I'll take the heat. It's literally, I don't know if you can see it. It's behind me up on my shelf, but yeah, it's like this nice tin edition got from somebody, and I was watching. I don't know. It was one of those instances where like I was watching it, really liked it, got into it. Life happened, and just ended up picking it back up. But we're going down a little bit of a side road here. But yeah, like I'm as guilty as the next person. Yeah, there's just so much content, so much art out there to enjoy. Yes. It just takes some time. There's only so many hours in the day.
Life happens.
Yeah,
and life gets in the way of movies sometimes. Life happens to the characters in this film where we have a family transplanted to Germany, I guess. It's telling me that's the German Alps. So this is Gretchen moving to Germany with her father and I guess stepmother and stepsister, right? Is that right? It's actually been a few weeks since I watched this. So
her biological father and then stepmother and stepsister.
Yeah. And some weird stuff starts going down. I mean, obviously, Dan Stevens is going to give off a creepy vibe. He's got a bit of he's doing a bit of an accent here. And I think that's where it's like, this movie is kind of humorous, right? Like, it has to me, it's not like a full out horror movie. Like, there's an edge of humor that runs throughout this movie that I think some people will read it as like too silly to be scary. But I'm loving it. I like, to me, it's kind of falls into that like unhinged territory where it's just like, we're going into uncharted waters with some interesting performances.
It's got
and the two main actors here, Hunter and Dan, do a really fantastic job.
Oh yeah, they do an amazing job, and it is like an off-kilter kind of vibes. There's something always just feels like kind of slightly off through the whole movie, right? And puts you a little. And sometimes the director finds humor in that. Sometimes it's just like straight up creepy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's just straight up weird stuff. Like when it gets to like the kind of reveal at the end, there's like just some weird, kind of really cool ideas. But yeah, just like really, really creepy stuff.
And that's probably a good time to do a spoiler warning. Our standard one. We don't hold back on spoilers, so you've been warned. If you haven't seen Cuckoo yet, check it out and come back and join us.
Can we do some special effects, like some sirens or something, and say spoilers? Like spoilers and like what's our budget on the show, Brian?
Yeah, I don't know if that's in the budget right there.
Can we who do we talk to about up in the budget?
Well, if you want to send some money in, you know.
By the way, he's talking to me, not the audience. He's like, Nathan, if you want to put up some cash for
this. Still recovering from having to buy a microphone to even start doing this podcast. Oh my goodness. What is your main thing that like stood out for this film for you? Like, what did you walk away with for this movie?
Like in terms of overall impressions, or like with something like
I feel a little aimless today.
I thought it was. I don't know. I didn't know this movie for me kind of came out of nowhere. I didn't see any advertising for it. I don't know if this. Would you classify this as like an indie kind of horror film? Like certainly it's not big budget.
It had a $7 million budget, so that's indie enough.
Fairly low, say low budget then.
This is produced by Neon, who we're seeing more and more Neon films.
Yeah, kind of more niche, lower budget, kind of movies and horror films. So I had no expectations going into this, and I was pleasantly surprised. I really liked Hunter did an amazing job as the main character. At first, I thought she was gonna be one of those At first, I was like, is she gonna be one of these annoying characters that's just so passive and doesn't do anything? I was just like, not another one of these characters. But then she's like, okay, she's got some fight in her, and it's like this the one scene where it's like, it's like she pulls out like the switchblade and it's like before she goes in. So it's like, okay, so she's got some fire in her belly. The Gretchen character, right?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, and she wasn't as passive overall. So I was kind of at the beginning, I was just like, she's just gonna be one of those characters that runs around screaming or just like doesn't do anything. But no, like that turns it around. So like her performance was amazing. The whole creepy vibe, some of it worked for me. Like the vibe and the plot, some of it worked for me. Some of it didn't. I really liked the reveal at the end of the Cuckoo people. It was essentially like a different species of like what they call it at the end. The scientist studying this was like Homo cuckoialis or something. Something like it was a ridiculous name, but the idea was like there's this other species that looks identical to humans, and they're a parasitic species. Because like I remember hearing this fact before about cuckoos, who like the birds who would lay eggs in other birds' nests, and then those other birds would raise them as though they were their own. And sometimes those birds would even, the baby cuckoos would actually kick out other birds from the nest and kill them.
Oh, interesting.
And so it was like, I remember hearing that fact before, but when they brought it up again, it's like, aha, okay. And then they explained it's like different species of human, and they had like this parasitic way of like they would implant their seed in human hosts who then give birth to their offspring. So these kind of, they look like us, but they have these weird vocal powers.
Yeah.
And they just like very kind of weird. It was interesting. It was almost like this thought experiment, this idea of like, oh, here's a different species, two species of uh, of human beings that evolved along parallel evolutionary paths. Like that was like a really cool horror idea that I don't think I saw. I don't think I've seen before. It may have come up in other movies, but for me, that was the first time. So, oh, that's a really cool, unique idea. I was like, yeah, I was like, this is really neat, and I would like to see more of that kind of world explored. I don't want to like, I don't know if this is a movie that's conducive to a franchise. Hollywood will find a way, I'm sure, if there's any
as it does, yeah,
kind of success. But like that whole thing, the reveal at the end is like, okay, that's pretty cool. But like then thematically, to see how that Cuckoo ties back, because the whole thing, there's a couple things going on, right? Like Gretchen is dealing with, as we find out, not just the loss of her mother, but like her mother's dead. We find out at the end. First, we think she moved away. We find out that she's dead, but then from the perspective of both Gretchen and her sister, what's her sister's name? I can't remember the
Alma.
Yeah, Gretchen and Alma. From each of their perspectives, the other one is kind of like the cuckoo, right? Where Gretchen's seeing like she's kind of being replaced almost by her new. She's got a new mom, like her stepsister, new sister, and from Alma is from her point of view, she's almost being replaced by, because now Gretchen's coming into this family again. Mm-hmm. And so from each of their perspectives, the other one is kind of like the cuckoo trying to kick the other one out of the nest and get the attention from the parents. So I thought like it was actually, when you think about it, it's actually pretty clever. Like they actually, like the filmmakers actually really thought this through, and the theme, it's not just like, oh yeah, here's a bunch of weird cuckoo people and they were doing weird cuckoo stuff. It's like, no, thematically it ties in at the end. So when you have that catharsis at the end between the two characters,
yeah, it's
really more impactful when you think about how that theme ties into what's going on the screen. So I thought like that worked for me. And thinking, this is one of those movies where immediately I'm going online and like reading about like, what does this mean? What does that mean? And all these great, like seeing people's perspectives. One of those movies where it's open to interpretation and there's levels going on. So that was really cool for me. That stuck out to me.
No, that's kind of eye opening too. Like I think when I was watching it, especially near the end, I'm just like, I'm still not entirely sure what exactly is going on. Like, but to throw it all out there, I think you summed it up really well. And to have the themes come in, the stepsister dynamic is pretty poignant there. I thought that's insightful right there.
And then also the reveal that Alma was one of these cuckoo people.
Oh yeah, that's right. I was like, she was an actual cuckoo. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, that was interesting too. Where it's like, yeah, they're literally different species, but at the end, like Gretchen was like, no, you're my sister. Like I love you. It doesn't matter where you came from. It doesn't matter your past, kind of thing. I think that's always a powerful message of kind of love and acceptance, right? Where she overcomes. She's resentful of obviously, her younger stepsister who her father seems to dote on more, and her stepmother seems to dote on more as well, or seems to care about more. And, to come kind of full circle, it was like, no, I'm going to risk my life to protect you. From before, it's like, I don't care. I'm going to run away and I don't care what happens to you. I don't always want to be, I don't want to hang out with you at all. That was pretty crazy. And then like the whole kind of Mexican standoff at the end where she's leaving.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, it was a whole pretty intense. The whole shootout is kind of, yeah, it's kind of intense, but also kind of silly, kind of fun. Where like even like what's his name there? The dude gets shot, but he comes back and he seems completely fine afterwards. The the King Kong dentist. I forgot his name.
Dan Stevens?
Dan Stevens, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
King Kong dentist is his name now. Dan Stevens comes back. It's like his character was just like, he was so over top creep. Even like just a subtle thing at the beginning where he meets the family and he puts his hand up on Gretchen's shoulder. Simple, super subtle. Is like, that's super creepy just the way he did it. And it's like, you can tell she's creeped out by it. It's like, yeah, this guy has got, he played the creepy guy really well. Yeah.
Well, I mean, 100%. Like he is a main focus in the early movie where like he's giving everyone the creeps, and he sort of like runs this resort area and employs Gretchen, and he's being creepy, and he's just like, and also like, you can't ride your bike home. It's going to be too late at night. Take a ride from so-and-so. And there's an element of like, well, why are you being creepy like that? But also
Why are you trying to protect her?
vested interest in protecting her
Yeah.
from this other Cuckoo woman who I think is just like credited as the hooded woman who ends up.
She's the mother of the brood, right?
Yeah. And Gretchen does end up, because, she's too cool for all this stuff. Like, she's a little bit rebellious and she's not in a good mental space right now to start this new job. So she defiantly rides her bike home and is chased down by this hooded woman, which is a pretty effective scene. I thought that was really good. And to end up even at the hospital and was like, she can't get into this clinic hospital. Like, they have locked the doors.
Security lockdown. She's trying to get buzzed in, and she gets in and she runs face first into the second set of doors of the glass and cuts herself.
Which is just, like, it's really brutal. It's like, that's when you kind of start thinking, well, the entire town is kind of like in on something. Like, this creature who's out there is like part of this town. Like, everyone maybe knows about them, but who is in on it, who is not in on it. Yeah, it almost becomes like that folk horror thing of like the Wicker Man, where it's like, is everyone in on this whole process and to operate the way they're doing as revealed by the end, where Dan Stevens' character is kind of like running the show and
he's running like in his words, a nature preserve to preserve these cuckoo people.
Yeah, it was just it was really neat. Now that at the end of the movie we find out Gretchen's mother is actually dead, did Dan Stevens have like his character have a play in that? Because we know that his father is dating this woman and she has her daughter who is an actual cuckoo. Like, she's part of this process to get the family back. Did he go and have this woman killed?
No, I don't think so. I think this was, actually put, from my read of the movie anyway, this actually put a kink in his plans, right? Because he wasn't expecting Gretchen. He wasn't planning on having Gretchen, because the whole thing was, I think at the beginning of the movie, and I didn't pick up on this at first, because there was an issue with the subtitles I had to go back and fix. But like they said something about at the beginning when that teenager runs away, and we see her come back later. She's one of the cuckoo people. It's like they say specifically, with her daughter gone, it's going to be harder to control the mother. Something along those lines, right? Because they lose control of one of the cuckoo people, and the mother's going crazy because she's trying to find her young. So I think that was the whole catalyst for bringing that family back, to get their hands on Alma so that she could reintegrate with the flock, to help placate the mother and keep her from running amok, right? When the mother has her children nearby, it seems to have like a calming effect on her, where she's like taking care of them or something, right?
Yeah.
So I think quite the opposite. I think Dan Stevens' character didn't actually want Gretchen there, because she's like throwing a wrinkle now into his plans, right?
I did enjoy also the police officer who was like forced retirement or something. He wasn't actually police, but he was doing the investigation. And
he was a former inspector, yeah.
Gretchen was like right on board with helping him investigate what's going on. And I do enjoy that. It's like, he's not just taking a risk of like, oh, you know what? I believe your crazy story and I'm going to help you investigate this. He sort of knows what's going on already. She doesn't. And he's like, well, I'll take your help to like look around, but using her as bait, right? Like, he has ulterior motives here of his own to use Gretchen to help
everyone's motives are kind of sus, because even like Dan Stevens, why can't I remember this dude's name?
I don't know. His character name is Herr Koenig. I'm probably butchering that.
Herr Koenig, yes. Koenig, yeah. So Koenig at the beginning is like, oh, when he wants to drive her home at night because he's worried about her, it's like, okay, well, maybe there's going to be one of those reveals where it's like he seems creepy, but he's actually going to protect her or something. No, he was creepy the whole time. And then with police characters, like, you can tell something's not right with him the whole time. Is like he is on the up and up, but like this idea that he was fired because he was obsessing about this case of talks about this, the man and the woman dies because she chokes on her own vomit. Turns out that it was his wife who died. It wasn't a case he was investigating; it was his own, and he became obsessed, et cetera, and he kind of self-destructed, and they got kicked off the force. But then, yeah, and it's interesting to see, like, you're constantly worrying, you're constantly wondering about the characters' motivations, because you're seeing things a lot from Gretchen's point of view. And even at the end, it was really neat how there was these shifting alliances, right? Where it's like she goes in with the cop, and they overhear the scientist talking about, it's like, oh yeah, the the Cuckoo people, and they're going to reintegrate Alma into the, with the mother with the flock, and she's going to take her and live. And she's like, no. And like the cop is there. He's like, no, we're going to kill any Cuckoo people, shoot them on sight, right? The goal is to kill them all. And at this point, Gretchen's like, no, I got to save she's my sister now, even though she's, she's this weird Cuckoo human hybrid thing. She's my sister. I'm going to save her. So she's like, she's fighting him and stabbing him with her switchblade. And then obviously they're both kind of at odds with Koenig wants to not just breed these Cuckoo people, but also wants to control them. So there's also that theme of like, he's creating this nature reserve, but it's not in the best interest of the Cuckoo people either. He wants to control them and use them for his own nefarious purposes, right? You see him where he's using them to like murder people and things like that. So like all of a sudden at the end is like, all these shifting alliances and shifting motivations of people wanting this. I thought that was really, really good. And it just like added that kind of creepy vibe where you're never sure exactly who is in on what, or even if there's something to be in on, right?
It's true.
It's like, is this person just like creepy for the sake of being creepy? Or is he part of a larger conspiracy? Does he have his own motivations going on? And so it kind of keeps you on your toes when you're watching this. Like, you're never quite sure until the very end, like who's on what side and what they're doing and why. And it's like, it was well thought out.
I think people going in with different expectations, because I've seen some of the reviews where they say, well, this is just too many ideas and things thrown against a wall to see what ends up sticking. But when you sort of throw it out there and describe it as you have, like it's a pretty like thoughtful, layered, multi genre film. Like it is a horror film, but it's also, a bit of sci-fi. It's a lot of mystery, I think. Right. And
it's almost like a whodunit, a thriller kind of thing. And the investigation, you got the Scooby Gang investigation with the cop and Gretchen.
Right. And I think we're seeing this more and more. It's like maybe a little bit of confidence from the filmmakers here that they can mash together different genres. And this is more of I don't want to go back into that argument of like, what is elevated horror, right? Where it was like, oh, elevated horror, you're
gonna get the podcast. You're gonna get all this hate mail now. As soon as you start talking about elevated horror, you're gonna get hate mail from both sides, Brian.
Right? Elevated horror for a while was just like, oh, it's a horror movie, but like with some emotions behind it, right? It's just like, well, they all kind of
with your Grey Poupon.
Yeah. It's like here we're encountering elevated horror that has like actual like significant like themes and other genres mixed in, and I think they're doing them pretty effectively.
Yeah, and it's pretty. There's also kind of the coming of age or teen drama kind of aspect where you see Gretchen kind of figuring out what she's trying to do. You realize later she's dealing with the trauma of having lost her mother and not feeling quite accepted with her current family. But you see like that when she decides to run off with this random girl that she meets. She's like, you like music? She comes to Paris, and she's like, yeah. And it's like you see them, and they start making out and smoking. And see them in the car, where the Cuckoo ends up with their weird voice powers scrambling their brains a bit, and they end up in the crash. Which, by the way, like it's very rare where you see in a movie where you really feel the car crash. Usually feels like, especially like in an action film or something, where people get in the car crash and they just brush it off, crawl to the car, and like still like run away and fight bad guys and stuff. Where this one felt like even in the aftermath, like Gretchen was beat up after that car crash, where she had like just the cast with that full metal brace on her arm, and her face was just like looked like hamburger. It was like, oh yeah, like looked like she was actually in a car wreck. It looked like it took her like weeks or months to recover. Like that is like props to them. Like, and the way she was even acting afterwards in terms of like just the physicality is like, like she felt like she took a beating. Like like that was rough. I was like, I was rubbing my own arm, like get the phantom kind of pains, like watching her. Is like, this is really well done, yeah.
And then I think the scene also helps where she's recovering in the hospital, and her father is not impressed with she's going to run away to France with this other woman
after she steals from Tony Stevens there.
Steely
Dan. What is his name?
The disrespect towards Dan Stevens right now is unbelievable.
I got this weird mental block about Dan Stevens. I'm going to remember it after this podcast.
So the scene in the hospital where it's like, oh, someone's going to stay with me, right? It's like, no, you've done quite a bit of bad things right now, and you're going to sit here by yourself for a while.
You see, like the father's getting frustrated. It's like, you just take this bus and leave, and that's fine. Like, I'm done. I can't deal with this. And you can see it's like, from her point of view, it's like the cry for help kind of thing. You don't run off to Paris with a girl you just met. Um, like that's obviously a kind of cry for help kind of behavior, right? Where she's putting herself in, like, she doesn't know anything about this girl. And she's gonna go to a foreign country.
She's this woman is like a guest. She's checking into this hotel
at the resort there, yeah.
And I do like that scene where it's just like, oh, like, are they going to connect? Or are they not connecting? Like, there's also a bunch of weird stuff happening at the hotel. Like, that other woman walks in and just like starts doing things like in the background.
A couple of times when she first goes, like, Gretchen first gets there, and the other clerk is teaching her stuff, and the woman just like pukes, and then they escort her out. And then later on, when Ed, I think is the woman's name, she calls herself Ed, she's kind of checking in or checking out, and there's another woman who just walks in, kind of just in her like nightgown, and just is over by the drink, like the cooler, to get a drink, and she pukes on the floor, and then takes a drink, and she's starting to just like down these drinks. It's like, so the women puking, which we find out later is because they've been impregnated by these weird cuckoo people with this weird, it doesn't show where they get the slime from that they impregnate them with the parasite. I don't want to know where that slime comes from. I'm assuming from their cloaca. I'm assuming they have, I don't know what it's like under the hood with the cuckoo people. I'm assuming it's like, I don't want to assume. I don't want to know where. Thankfully, they don't get too graphic and showing where that parasitic slime comes from, where they infect their hosts. But all these little hints about all these women are puking over the place. Is like, they impregnate women, let them go in the world, and then they bring them back to take the kids and raise them as part of the cuckoo families, right? As part of their twisted nature reserve.
Yeah.
But you don't know what's going on with her and Ed. Is there the will they, won't they? And it's like, they definitely will. Will they? Yeah,
they definitely will. And I think that scene also, because Ed is like a passerby through this town, presumably, but she's not like super reacting to these weird people walking in and like puking on the floor. Like, they all observe it, but to me, it's almost kind of funny where it's like, they're just not as concerned as you think you would be in real life, maybe. But, she's got different priorities at hand here.
Maybe, but also, like, it's also that kind of sense of denial. You see something weird happening, and you don't, or you just don't have the precedent really to process that. Something weird happens, and you're just like, is that really that weird? It's like, I'm just gonna keep my head down and keep moving forward. Like, if they're like in any situation, like we've been in those situations where it's like, this seems weird. I'm just gonna keep my head down, keep moving forward. So it's like, as an outside observer looking in, you're like, all the warning lights are flashing. But if we were in that situation, we were just like, you'd be in denial a little bit. It's like, no, that's not really happening, right? Like, that guy with the chainsaw, he's cutting out a tree. He's not going to hurt me. Like, of course not, right? If you're actually in the situation.
Oh my goodness. All I know is that I don't think I'd be able to outrun that person, the hooded lady chasing you on the bike.
Even on the bike?
I'd be pretty gassed out after, because she gets way out in front of her for quite a while.
Yeah.
And it's like, this woman continues, and it's just like, oh, I've outrun her. I'm on a bike. And she just like sort of goes along at a casual pace again. It's like, nope, she's still coming. It's just like
those cuckoo people, they got stamina.
They got stamina, yeah.
What do you think about the cuckoo, their voice powers there?
It was pretty, I like how it's represented in the movie. Like, I like that we heard it earlier and it was kind of confusing. It's just like, oh, like there's some mystical beast out there. Are other people even hearing this noise?
Yeah.
Isn't the, oh my goodness, the other daughter there, Alma. She was a cuckoo, obviously, we find out, but like, did she have an impairment of some sort? Was she able to hear things?
Oh, she could hehear, but the cuckoo people can't actually speak. This whole thing, right? They can't speak our language. So she had, like, Alma, I guess they're intelligent enough because she was using the text. The text, like, on her phone, she would type something in and have it speak for her. But they can't speak. They can only use this weird power, which kind of hypnotizes their prey. And, like, the way it's represented in terms of, like, at first I thought it was like, oh, it's some kind of weird freaky time loop thing going on. Like, but it was what was happening was that they were just trying to show from the perspective of the people who were affected by the cuckoo's,
oh, that's right,
disabling call. Just like it would loop over and over again and it would be like a weird sense of deja vu. They were kind of stuck in that moment, and it almost like immobilizes you, right? But from the perspective of the victim, it's like oh, I'm stuck in this moment. It's like, what is happening right now? It's like, this feels really weird, where it's like feels like I'm reliving the same moment over and over again. It's almost like your brain is almost like skipping on a record almost, as opposed, it's not time skipping. It's almost like your brain is like, your brain, like the needle in your brain is skipping on the record of your synapses, right?
I totally forgot about the little time skip deja vu thing. That was really interesting and definitely like lends itself to the sci-fi element there. Yeah. Just like, oh, is something else going on in these Alps? Like, are they sitting over some crazy mineral deposit that's causing time dilation?
When you find a stranger in the Alps. No, but maybe from a visual standpoint, that I get where that might have been a little bit confusing, and like to somebody watching that and thinking, oh, this is a time loop movie or something going on with time. So I think maybe it was a cool visual element, but maybe you're going to lose some audience members there or confuse things based on just visual language that people learn from other movies, right?
Yeah.
So it was an interesting way to display from the victim's point of view what the cuckoo's cry does, the cuckoo people's cry does to you. But on the other hand, is like, yeah, you potentially, based on you consider people's people's understanding of kind of cinematic language from other movies that they may have watched, and might confuse things a little bit, right? So
yeah, people come in with certain
pro and con, right?
Yeah. You watch a trailer and like, I don't remember seeing a trailer for this movie or anything. It was just to have good buzz on the internet there. And, but yeah, like you said, you come in with a certain expectation and you walk out, and this thing, I don't know if you could ever be prepared for this movie and everywhere it goes, right? It's just like, this doesn't play by the normal rule book.
Movie doesn't play by anybody's rules, including its own.
Which is great. I mean, I think that's what we've always wanted, is just more innovation, more stuff going out there, some original stories, and like upending our expectations. Like, just, that's what makes a movie interesting these days.
Maybe if you're an ornithologist and you know about cuckoos, maybe the title Cuckoo will spoil it for you.
Yeah. That's true.
It's like, I was wondering, well, if you're like if you're into birds and you see the title Cuckoo and you start watching the movie, you're going to guess the twist early on, maybe.
Yeah, possibly, yeah.
But for those of us non-bird people, non-bird lovers.
The lesser folk, non-bird lovers. We appreciate birds.
Yeah, but the movie, absolutely, it's tough. I would have guessed where this movie was going. So for good or ill, right? Whether or not you liked where it was going or not, whether or not you liked where it ended up, is another question. But certainly, I don't think anyone could have, the average moviegoer, I don't think would have predicted kind of the twists and turns this movie would take, which is a nice change of pace.
Without a doubt. I don't think I have anything else to add before we get into our ratings of this movie. Do you want to throw anything else out there?
Yeah, I think one of the other positives for me was Gretchen's whole journey and kind of coming to that culmination when they're in that final standoff with Koenig and the inspector, or the disgraced inspector, and she's in that room with Alma, and it's revealed that because there was because what she was doing, it was kind of almost therapeutic, was that Gretchen was calling her house. They still had an answering machine set up with a message from her mother, so she was calling her throughout the movie, saying stuff like, "I want to come home. Things are weird here." And you find out later that was not, she wasn't talking to her mother. That was her, almost like a way of kind of her working her way through the grief and dealing with that.
Yeah.
And then she eventually, the father sells off the house that they had back home, and all the effects, including the answering machine message, are brought, to their house in Germany. She hears a message. Alma overhears this message about, "I want to come home," or she asks about, like, "Oh, can she come and visit," or something. She's like, "I don't think that's a good idea." And then you find out later that Alma ended up calling her mother and using her text to voice app there, saying like, "Oh yeah, Gretchen's really sad. Can you please come out and visit? It'd be really nice for her to see this. Oh yeah, like, even though this is like, Alma's a weird cuckoo hybrid person, or hybrid human being, she actually does care about Gretchen, right? Despite the fact that it's like their stepsisters kind of at odds." And you see that coming to terms, where like at the end, this heartbreaking scene, like, played beautiful. Was it Hunter Schafer? I think is the actress's name.
Yes.
and just like the emotion that she's conveying, and like because she knows that her mother's dead, but Alma doesn't, and she doesn't want to spoil that. She wants her to like think like, oh yeah, Alma did this nice thing of trying to reunite her with her mother, and she's explaining to her, she's telling us like, yeah, I don't think she's going to be able to come, but like we're sisters, we're family, but like knowing behind that, she doesn't want to traumatize this little girl and tell her that her mother's dead. Like that whole thing of her coming to terms with that trauma and the death of her mother. It's always a powerful theme in movies, and it can go a lot of different ways. But I thought it was a really kind of touching scene in the middle of this weird cuckoo person, folk horror mystery teen sex romp, but to have those moments of real human emotion, and that dealing with, as we all do at some point, is dealing with the loss of a loved one or a parent, or that generational kind of turnover. That was really well done, and I thought that was a really touching moment, and it was a really great way to like set up the whole rest of that ending sequence, where it's like, yeah, they're gonna be together. They spoilers, they escape, and Koenig and Steely Dan shoot each other, and then they kind of there's a peace made at the end, and a little
Ed shows back up because he thought maybe Ed didn't make it.
She's alive.
She's alive.
They're going.
And yeah, they all head out together, and that was nice. So there's some hope in the world.
They make it out, yeah. Overall, yeah, it came together nicely. The final showed up that in the library there, or wherever it was, with the stacks of books and everything. That whole scene was pretty tense in terms of the back and forth about who has the upper hand and stuff. That was really good. But then that end scene, just like that emotional catharsis, was just like, yeah, it was really well handled.
Very good.
So yeah. Props to the director and writer for that.
Written and directed by the same person.
Kind of figured. Yeah. Figure most indie films or low budget stuff is usually the writer director kind of thing. well written and directed and well acted. I think I mentioned that already, but it's like the whole thing was just like, yeah, it was a beautiful moment. Brings a tear to your eye.
That's right.
Unless you got a heart of stone like Brian. Wow. Sitting there's like, no, she's a cuckoo killer.
She should have been dead by now.
You fool.
Oh, God. I guess it is time for our reviews. And as we do on the Reel Film Chronicles, we'll make Nathan guess, and you can play along at home as well on the various ratings, user ratings and critic that this movie has received, including the Rotten Tomato critic and audience is what we start with. Obviously using the 100% scale. So my question to you and everyone is, what is the Rotten Tomato critic? What percentage reviewed this movie favorably?
Okay, this is I got a feeling like last time I'm going to be way off on this. But my record was kind of shot at the last episode, but I'm going to guess critic 72.
Close, you're getting close there. It's 78%.
Okay.
It's not bad. Rotten Tomato audience.
I'm going to guess a little bit lower. I'm going to guess 67.
62%.
Okay.
So not too far off.
I got this impression that this would be one that the critics would probably like more than the average audience.
The IMDb users use a 10-point scale. What do you think its IMDb user average is?
6.1.
Very close. It is 5.9.
Okay.
And finally, Letterboxd, where you can find us and follow everything we do and watch.
Oh, wait, they can't see my thumbs up, can they?
They can't see your thumbs up.
It's not a YouTube video. Damn it. All my mugging for the camera, it doesn't pay off.
Whoopsie. They use the 5.5-star system. What is the user average on Letterboxd?
2.8.
Very close. 3.0 right now.
Oh, okay.
I'll be honest. I tried to play this a little bit myself as I was putting together the numbers here. I thought this was going to be like a 3.7 or 3.8 Letterboxd average. And to see it at 3.0.
Oh, really?
Kind of like took the wind out of my sails. I'm like, what happened here, everyone? I thought we were all into these indie horror, kind of like weird movies. Yeah. But maybe it's just the people I follow that are kind of like...
I don't want to hear any more complaints about anybody with the next big superhero movie. Why are we all getting sequels and big budget superhero movies with special? It's like, no, because nobody shows up for when you get independent cinema.
Yeah.
No more
this
complaining.
one truly was like, it was independent. I saw this in our small indie theater in town. I don't think it ever came out on our big theater chains. It was just a limited run, which was a nice experience because it's kind of nice when you show up at those screenings and there's maybe like 12 other people and they're all coming for like this experience. But I think everyone has seen this, and yeah, like you sort of mentioned how certain elements would be difficult for, mainstream audiences to find. And I think if people go in sort of expecting maybe just kind of like a typical horror movie, they may come out disappointed. But, when you throw an indie movie like this out here, and then you throw Dan Stevens in, and like some of the previews look a little wacky, it's like you're in for a wild ride. It was definitely there. So that brings us to our ratings. As I said, we use the Letterboxd platform. 5-star possibility with a possible heart bonus on top. What is your rating on Cuckoo 2024?
I gave this a 3.5 out of 5.
3.5. Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was better than average, right? Like, this is like 3.5 out of 5 for me is definitely like, this is better than average. Again, like there was a lot of cool elements, a lot of neat ideas in there. I don't know. Maybe I wasn't in the right frame of mind. It didn't, like certain moments and certain elements clicked for me, but overall it didn't quite click, right? The idea of the Cuckoo people I thought was really, really cool. I don't know. I just thought there was in terms of the Cuckoo people, like, for example, like maybe there's a way to like make them a bit more different. I mean, they had the weird eyes and they had the weird voice thing.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know if there's a way to kind of, again, you're dealing with like limited budget too. I get it. So like the points for the ideas, but maybe the execution was a bit raw, or maybe in the build up and the suspense, I needed maybe a bit more to sink my teeth into in terms of clues, right? So
that's
like
fair. Yeah.
Like thematically, I like the thematic depth, right? So like the storytelling and the thematic depth and the characters and the acting is really good. It was maybe just a little bit in terms of the storytelling, felt a little bit rough around the edges. That was like, I really enjoyed this movie and I really encourage people to go out and see it. It's a really unique horror movie, really unique take, which is something that's difficult to find these days. But I think there was just a few things that fell a little bit short for me. But I really enjoyed the movie. Like, I don't want you to get me wrong. Like, I'm feeling shame now for my 3.5 rating. What did you give this movie then? I'm expecting like a perfect 7 out of 5 here.
7 out of 5. I gave this movie a 4 out of 5. I gave it 4 stars. I don't think it. I could not articulate why I really enjoyed the movie as much as how you described it here. I think you hit on everything really well. And that's why I think I'm a little shocked that you came in down into the 3-star, 3.5 star.
We're only
area.
half a star. I think we're pretty closely
I know
aligned.
we're not far off, but I was expecting 4 or 4.5 based on our discussion here. And I don't think we really hit on anything like too negative throughout the movie. But
no,
I do agree. Like maybe it's that click. It's that thing where it's like at the end of the day, it doesn't feel like a 5-star film. Maybe
there's a certain X factor, like different movies, different vibes for different people. Whereas like some movies that I watch and like I love, and other people like that are critically and widely panned by other audiences, like I get it, man. So that's why I encourage people, go out and watch this. There's going to be, I think, for a movie like this, there's going to be a smaller subset of people that it clicks with, but that's why I'm encouraging more people to see this to get that small, like to capture more of that audience for this movie who's really going to love this. Like there's a saying, somebody said, like every movie is somebody's favorites, right? And so like this might be a good chance to find your new favorite movie if you're into horror movies, right? So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And there's probably a fandom out there, there's probably people out there who's going to click with and be like, boom, something goes off in their brain. 100% I can see that happening. It's a really cool idea.
That's pretty fair. The last thing, what we usually neglect to talk about, but we'll throw the question out there because I actually remember this time. Are you going to buy this movie when it comes out on disc? Are you going to add this to your massive shelf of movie collection?
Massive shelf. You know what? Yeah, I would love to add this to my collection. I would be honored to lay down my hard-earned cash for this movie, because I think, it's a solid movie for me, and this is exactly the kind of movie that I feel that, like we need to, as fans, as audiences, we need to put kind of our money where our mouth is if we want to see more, independent movies, more unique stories. Also, another thing we didn't talk about, but I wanted to quickly mention in terms of representation and inclusivity. I was reading up on the as I do, and I'm sure Brian, you do too. You do, as soon as you finish a movie, you're going to go online, and you're going to read what people say and look up actors and whatnot. And I didn't realize Hunter Schafer is transgender, and I thought this was so cool because in terms of inclusion and representation, she wasn't playing a transgender character.
Mm-hmm.
Like wasn't a big ad campaign. It's like, oh, this is a transgender actor in this. It's like, no, she was just there playing this teenage girl that doesn't play into it at all. I thought, like, yeah, this is exactly, like it wasn't a big deal. She wasn't typecast as like, oh, a transgender person can only play a transgender character, which sometimes, there's one of these issues. Like, this is really, you support this movie, and you're supporting that inclusion and the diversity, and opening up opportunities for, more people from more walks of life and more backgrounds to have more of these opportunities. I thought that was so cool.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, it's like, you're supporting the LGBTQ plus community in a roundabout way as well. So I thought that was really cool as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's not something that is relevant to the plot or anything. It's not part of the character. She is just who she is, and I didn't realize that until I think I saw it in the IMDb trivia after reading about the movie. It's just like, that's great. That's great that's out there. And
yeah, so I took a little bit of a roundabout, little bit of an excursion there. But yeah, in terms of, I'm assuming you're going to add this to your collection as well. Hopefully we had a 4K of this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I'm going to pay $45, $50 for the movie if it comes out on some steelbook or anything.
You're waiting for like the Arrow box set of this, right?
Yeah. We need one of these labels to release a super edition of this, which I'm sure it would get eventually. It seems like you sort of said, there's going to be a small subset who, like, this is their favorite film, and I think this movie lends itself to having a cult following. And a greater appreciation for anyone who really enjoys horror films, can appreciate everything that's going on here, even if it doesn't click 100%.
This is exactly the kind of movie where, because people know, I'm sure you get this question too, like you're a film lover, tell them, oh, I got like, thousands of movies on my shelf. It's like, oh, what movies would you recommend? It's like, I love to recommend stuff that's like kind of off people's radar, that might not be on like that most people know about, just something a little bit different. This is exactly one of those movies I would recommend to people, where it's like, it's not super gory and bloody, right? So it's like, yeah, if you're looking for a horror movie, this is exactly the kind of movie I would love to recommend to people, or I love to I will recommend to people. It's like, oh, it's really cool. It's like something you might not have heard of, something that's not too crazy. You're not getting to like Lars von Trier territory in terms of its yeah. Where it's like, yeah, but it's like something a little bit different, a little bit outside people's, typical kind of watch list, a little bit just not quite on people's radar. This is exactly the kind of thing that I get points for as a cinephile, recommending recommend a movie like Cuckoo. So yeah, 100%, like getting people, expanding people's taste. Just like take a small step outside the mainstream, right? So yeah, 100%, it's a great movie to introduce to people. I'm going to absolutely introduce this to people.
Fantastic.
Go out and watch Cuckoo, buy Cuckoo, be Cuckoo.
Be Cuckoo. Oh, man. As always, we appreciate you hanging out with us today and taking the time to listen to our podcast. You can find us online over at reelfilmchronicles.com, where we have not just a repository of podcast episodes, but many of our written reviews as well. If you're up to it, you can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram as well. All the links should be within the show notes here. So until next time, take care of yourself and others, and be sure to enjoy your film journey.